Hello and welcome to this week's episode of We Used To Be Journos, the podcast where two media insiders break down broken news. I am one of those media insiders. My name is Jan Fran, and sitting across from me, as per usual, is my co-host Antoinette Latouf. And hello, Antoinette.
Hello, Jan Fran. And I feel not only am I sitting beside you, I feel like I have been standing beside you on a stage. We've been doing so much together.
We've been seeing too much of each other, some might say.
Yes, you would usually say that.
I do say that, yes, I have.
But it's been the South by Southwest stage. We did what I really enjoyed, a panel discussion about the future of political podcasting, or the rise of political podcasting in Australia.
A great discussion with our friends at Lamestream Media, Osman Faruqi. Yep.
Shout out. Also, the Night for Humanity, the fundraising event for Palestine at Enmore Theatre. I don't know what that was like for you, but I mean, I laughed and I cried and I did everything in between.
Yeah,
it's pretty incredible.
Gamut of emotions, that one. We also did we had a media diversity event that also kicked off. I think I did 4 events last week.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Yeah, it was a lot. And we're hanging out. We are hanging out a great deal.
Yes.
And my son the other day, actually, he was saying, I said, I'm going to go for a run. And he said, are you going to go with Antoinette? Just because he's heard your name so often.
You didn't go for a run for me. How disappointing.
I did not. And in fact, I said to him, son, in that moment, I was like, mate, I'm trying to see less of Antoinette. So, no, I'm not going for a run with Antoinette.
One other thing we squeezed into a very busy week was we did a photo shoot for the shirts we are wearing. It's a no from me and Etterati members only. Finally, they are on sale. Our subscribers did get first dibs because
we love them.
We love them. We love their support. And they're selling hot and fast. But now the link is available on etmedia.com for anybody else who wants to rep independent media in the wild.
Yes, so head on over to there and grab yourselves a shirt if that pleases you. It would very much please us. I'm always very pleasantly surprised when I see those shirts flying off the shelves like hotcakes. All right, what is in our show today?
Well, it's a packed one. My no, I have 2 no's this week. One is courtesy of men failing upwards at Sky News. So we have more revelations from that Freya Leach, bacon on a guest's shoulder, bigoted interview that ran on Sky News. My second no is about a live cross from the ABC. And in this instance, I really felt for the foreign correspondent, for the journalist, because I felt like the producers and the control room undermined what otherwise was really good reporting. More on that later.
Yes, we will get into the details of what is a control room. Some people listening might be like, I'm sorry, I don't, is that like the thing with all the screens?
It's like,
is.
Yes, and all the buttons and things.
And all the buttons, indeed. I also have a no today that is around the ceasefire. The breach of the ceasefire, the strain of the ceasefire, the wobble of the ceasefire.
What is a ceasefire?
Lots of questions around the language and the framing. So we're going to get into that. And then also we're going to have a little bit of a chat in the second half of the show about commentary v journalism.
Yeah, and this really came about after we dipped into investigative journalism and breaking news. Yes, our story, we think we'd do it again. It did go global. It was a good scoop. But we position
a quick reminder, we broke the story last week that the Prime Minister's phone number was being hosted on this US-based website along with the numbers of everyone.
Yeah, Barack Obama, allegedly, Donald Trump Jr., myself, because I'm certainly, in that company. But we position ourselves as an analysis and commentary podcast. Our very name is We Used To Be Journos. So we want to talk about why and how the delineation between what is opinion and what is news is no longer clear, and why that's a problem mainly for audiences, but sometimes for us, as journalists.
Well, truth be told, having done those stories, because there were 2 stories that we broke last week, but it has never been clearer for me, the delineation between journalism and commentary, because doing that, I was like, man, journalism's hard. Journalism takes time and it takes a lot
it's a different sort of
It's a different beast.
It's a different beast. But we'll go into that. Yeah. And my yes, I'm very excited about my yes because it goes to one of my career crushes, and that's Mehdi Hasan from Zateo News, and it was his speech at the No Kings rally, at one of the No Kings rally in the US. And I just love how he uses candor and humor to cut to the chase.
Okay, that's your yes. My yes comes to us courtesy of the reporters at the Pentagon. We're going to get into why there was a walkout and what in particular I liked about it. Before we get into all of that, like we said, packed show, I just want to make a quick note on the media and on how stories come about, because Albanese met with Donald Trump in the White House, Australian press pack in tow. And I just want to play you a moment from that press conference, which, you know, went on for some time, but a moment that is making quite a lot of headlines.
Taken 9 months to get this meeting. Have you had any concerns with this administration, with the stance on Palestine, climate change, or even things the ambassador said about you in the past, the Australian ambassador?
I don't know anything about him. I mean, if he said bad, then maybe he'll like to apologize. I really don't know. Did an ambassador say something bad about him? Don't tell me. I don't. Where is he? Is he still working for you?
Yeah.
Do you said bad?
Before I took this position, Mr. President.
I don't like you either. I don't, and I probably never will.
Oh, gosh. There you go. That was Donald Trump slagging off Kevin Rudd, I guess, to his face.
Yeah, with the help of Andrew Clennell from Sky News.
Yes, what a question.
Yeah.
Mr. President, do you have any issues with the fact that it's taken 10 months to meet you, or do you have any issues with like Palestine or like climate change? Like, let me just set up these culture war topics for you to knock them down, or do you have a problem with the ambassador who's like literally right here?
And it was like bite, and he did.
Yeah, total bite, and he did. And then not only did Donald Trump, not only was that set up, bite, and he did, but the media just bit as well, because I was on the SMH's website very early on Tuesday morning, just kind of having a look at, you know, what had happened overnight. And they had a bunch of stories, but they had summations called like key posts. And there were 10 key posts about the meeting with Donald Trump and Anthony Albanese. And 5 of those key posts were about Kevin Rudd.
Oh, gosh.
Do you know what I mean? Like half of the coverage, it was like, what does Wong think about Kevin Rudd? What does Susan Ley think about Kevin? Here is a video of Kevin Rudd. And, you know.
Like, here is Kevin Rudd's cat. Like, it just becomes, I mean, that was not one, but it comes less and less about the real issues of the day. You know, if 5 of the 10 points about Albanese meeting with Trump are about Kevin Rudd and a plant from Sky News, I'm like, gosh, you're kind of, surely there are bigger stories and bigger issues.
Well, there are. It does feel
just
like
a few things, like, I don't know, climate change in Palestine. I don't know. Just a couple. Okay.
All right. Well, that was not my no. That was just a little tidbit there at the top about, you know, how things become stories. Keep an eye out for Kevin Rudd's position is not tenable stories to roll out over the course of the week. But my no does come to us courtesy of everyone.
You're so generous with your judgment.
I am. Well, almost everyone for their coverage of the ceasefire violations in Gaza. And when I say violations, there were myriad words used to describe what happened. And when I say coverage, I don't know if it's coverage or more just really kind of running with the Israeli line. Let me tell you what I mean.
Okay.
So the ceasefire over the weekend, I believe on Sunday, was breached. Okay. Israel had conducted strikes across Gaza. To date, the death toll is there's been dozens. It's a moving feat, so I don't know where it will end up.
And I did see a lot of language, like Israel's actions were testing the ceasefire. They were putting pressure on the ceasefire. And the 7 News headline was Gaza ceasefire waivers. It all feels like a fan or a piece of paper. Or, you know, like just exert a bit of pressure on, I don't know.
Gaza ceasefire does a wibble wobble. You know, like
that's a whoopsie, I don't know.
Yeah, it's like, okay, what the? That was weird. But the other element of all of this was that most of the outlets were reporting this as Israel retaliating against Hamas, right? So honestly, you could have gone to any news website, bar The Guardian, to be fair. I did not see that particular headline on The Guardian. It could be up now.
Yeah.
Fact check me, people. I don't know. But I'm just going to give you an example of like what I think epitomizes this type of coverage, which is a story that I saw on the Channel 9 Instagram account. And it was very shortly after all of this had happened. It was just a reporter who was, talking down the barrel of a camera with some overlay. Let me just play this for you and we'll go through it bit by bit. It's short.
Okay.
Israel said Hamas attacked and killed 2 soldiers in Rafah, and in response, Israel retaliated with a series of strikes across the enclave, including in Khan Yunis in the south of Gaza.
Okay, so already we've got Israel responding and retaliating. The opening bit starts with Israel says.
Yeah.
So here is the Israeli line. It says it killed 2 soldiers because it's responding and it's retaliating. Okay, what comes after that? Like once we've set it up as that, what's next?
Israel releasing these images of what it says was a strike on Hamas infrastructure.
Okay.
So we've had it so that Israel said, Israel releases, what it says. So in the first 2 sentences, essentially, we've had 3, Israel said, Israel did, Israel's pictures.
And then we've got, here is some footage that Israel wants you to see.
Yeah,
okay,
cute.
What comes after that?
Israel then said it was also suspending aid into the region. Then within hours, Israel's Defence Force said it was to return to the agreement, but has warned Hamas it will pay a heavy price for any violations of the ceasefire.
Oh,
Right.
good Lord. I feel like Nine News is priming the public for more genocidal behaviour. Because Israel said it's going to have to do it because Israel said, and Israel said this image, and Israel said this, and this happened. So Israel had to do this, and now Israel's going to get a bit more
And now
genocidal.
Israel's issuing a warning, so don't say they didn't warn you.
We're going to get a bit more genocidal.
This
They
is
warned
all
you.
in like the first 40 seconds of this piece. Starts with Israel says, goes on to say that Hamas had killed 2 soldiers in Rafah and that Israel was responding and retaliating. Then it goes to Israel's releasing these images. Then it says Israel said it was also suspending aid into the region. And then it said Israel's Defence Force was to return to the agreement but warns Hamas.
I mean, IDF's PR people right now are high-fiving
Loving
each
it.
other going, you know what, guys? Aced it, love it, going to send you a thank you card.
To be fair to Channel 9, I did see a story later in the evening because remember, this is one of the first pieces that I saw after the, ceasefire had been wobbled. I did see a piece later that evening where they included, the Palestinian death toll. They included Palestinian mourners, people crying. So there was more of a human element to it. But this was the first piece that we got from them after this.
And I think it's important that we take a moment to talk about what comes first, because often what comes first sets the tone, it sets the narrative, and it's really hard to undo that when you try and add some qualifiers later. And so a lot of the defensiveness that we hear from media was like, well, we updated it later. By this point, we know that Israel breaches ceasefire. We know that Israel is accused of genocide, credibly accused of genocide, and that its leader is a wanted war criminal. This is not new information. And so it's not okay to be like, Israel said, Israel did, Israel wants Israel, and then be like, oh, but we updated it later with some crying Palestinians. That is not.
Yeah, and
that's not acceptable this far into the genocide.
You do also have to look at it in a wider context, which is just like every other media outlet was running with this line. So what then is left in the public imagination hours after this, ceasefire breach was that Hamas fucked it. Israel had no choice but to respond. Oh, look, they've gone back to the ceasefire agreement, but they're issuing a warning.
I know, and I know you have more to add. I just want to add something that we got from Shawnette, one of our listeners just in. He took a screen grab. He was out somewhere in the public and took a screen grab of a television screen, and it's from Sky News, and the super, that graphic that comes at the bottom of it is Israel resumes ceasefire after strikes. Like a ceasefire is something that you just kind of hit pause on and go it's okay, guys, ceasefire is back.
Yep. We've killed 47 people, but we're back. Yeah. We've decided to resume.
Yeah.
And we've decided to wobble it.
Yeah.
Or
waver.
It's wild. I mean, the Washington Post just straight up came up with an editorial, which is the Gaza ceasefire is cracking. That's a new word. Hamas is to blame.
Oh, okay.
That was just their editorial. And look, the reason why I guess I have an issue with this for all of the things that we've mentioned, right, was because that happened on Sunday.
Yes, and I think we'd point out 2 IDF soldiers were killed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just for the kind of chronology of events.
Oh, I mean,
on the Sunday, I believe. Yes.
I'm not doubting that.
Yes.
What happened on Friday, though?
2 days. Friday, for those who don't understand
The passage of time was
is before Sunday.
But 48 hours before Sunday, Israel killed 11 members of one family, all civilians who were returning to their home in Gaza City. Their bus was attacked, and they were attacked. The excuse that Israel gave was because they were crossing what's called a yellow line, which when you cross it, you move into, an Israeli demarcated area. Gaza Civil Defense
What is
said,
it, Israeli demarcated area?
Well-
It's essentially Israel's still in parts of Gaza. They haven't fully withdrawn.
Yes, there are
and there's a pretend line.
Well, I mean, if you listen to the Gaza Civil Defense that had to pull the bodies out of the mangled wreckage, one of them said, I'm fairly certain the family couldn't distinguish between the yellow and red lines because there are no actual physical markers on the ground. There were 7 children in that vehicle, and the youngest was 5 years old. And I had, where I found it? Do you want to know the top 3 searches that came up for me when I looked for that story?
Certainly not the Washington Post or 9 News.
No, but guess. Al Jazeera, Anadolu, and TRT World, 2 Turkish and 1 Qatari network. And it was called one of the gravest or deadliest violations since the ceasefire took place. I didn't see it anywhere. And yet 2 days later, all over the press is Israel retaliated, Israel responded, Israel is saying we're going back to the ceasefire after issuing a warning. And it wilds me out.
Yeah. And look, half of these headlines, I think it's important to point out, they came from Reuters. And we have spoken about Reuters before. They're like a wholesale news wire service. So you'll often see an article, it either says with Reuters down the bottom of it, or it just it's fully credited to Reuters, in which case newsrooms pay a subscription for wholesale news, essentially, that's syndicated through Reuters. So Reuters often set the tone and the agenda.
Not just the tone, the actual wording, the literal wording. Headlines are sometimes just used verbatim, totally. And if we're talking about ceasefire violations, and on your point about Reuters, there was a piece in the ABC that was actually a Reuters piece, because at the bottom it had Reuters.
With Reuters.
Not with Reuters.
Oh, no, just Reuters.
Just Reuters. There was
Okay.
no byline of any reporter. So it was clearly something that had been taken from Reuters. And there was this throwaway line about a ceasefire in Lebanon. And, they were comparing this ceasefire to the ceasefire that they had put in place with Hezbollah last year. And there was just this one line where they wrote, that ceasefire has since largely held.
And so I take issue with largely held, because is that how Reuters or how journalists qualify 108 civilians, including 16 children, who've been killed in Lebanon? And that's been verified by the United Nations.
Since the ceasefire
last November. So
what do you
that's
mean
largely held? So is 108 Arabs dying?
Fuck all. Doesn't matter.
Oh, that's holding. That's a ceasefire holding.
Yeah, that's a ceasefire holding. But 2 Israeli soldiers being shot.
Washington Post is like it's Hamas's fault.
I don't get it.
Even though 48 hours prior,
You wouldn't fucking know about any of these ceasefire breaches with Lebanon. Has anyone mentioned Lebanon? The reason that I'm bringing it up yesterday is because I spoke to a woman who's from the town of Yaron. And if anybody knows Yaron, which I do because it's my brother-in-law's village, happens to be, it's a border town. And she was saying that all sorts of, things happen every day where properties are getting bulldozed, and there's parts of the town have been kind of cut off and you can't go back. And
And look, 80,000 people are still displaced in southern Lebanon, not that gets a mention. Or when we talk about the Gaza ceasefire, the fact that Israel has continued to, according to the United Nations, almost bomb Lebanon daily, to the point that the UN is calling for an investigation into these ceasefire breaches. And Francesca Albanese, the special rapporteur to Palestine, she tweeted just the other day, ceasefire according to Israel is you cease, I fire. And so we know that they breach ceasefire agreements again and again. So there's no justification in this point in time for that kind of framing. It's dishonest. It's dishonest and pretty damn racist and dehumanizing when it comes to Arab lives.
So it's not only what you are getting in terms of all of those headlines, but it's also what you're not getting in terms of the family that was killed, the innocent civilians that were killed, right? You've got to take that all together. And this is like part of, and look, I don't know how you feel about this, but for me, I'm like, I feel like all we do is say, look, this is fucked, and this is fucked, and this is fucked.
But
and,
it is.
But it is. It is. I totally understand, and I would prefer that that somebody did say that, right? But like, what do we give to the audience listening, to all of you guys listening who
Other
are
than our righteous anger.
other than our, but genuinely, like, I don't know. What do I tell you to do? Like, it's fucked. Do I tell you to just like not engage with these outlets anymore? Or do I tell you to like engage but with a pinch of salt? Or do I tell like...
I mean, I think diversify your news diet. Definitely go to sources like Al Jazeera and Middle East Eye and TRT, even though they're, not completely unproblematic themselves on some subjects.
Wild. Like yesterday I shared a video on Instagram and I was like, I cannot believe I'm sharing a video from TRT World from a month ago. But literally, and it was about Lebanon and all of the, the whatever incursions or violations into Lebanon. But that's kind of like what you have to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's my no.
Yeah,
that's my real no.
Yeah, I feel you.
What's your no? Go ahead.
Oh,
You've got two. Here
I
you
have
go.
two. Okay, so you may recall that Sky News's Freya Fires Up was cancelled just 6 episodes in. So yeah, essentially 6 weeks. And this was following a controversy over a guest's remarks. So this happened in late September. A guest on the show was wearing strips of raw bacon on his shoulders and making anti-Islam remarks live on air, and essentially saying that he was wearing the bacon as protection.
It was fucking gross. Yeah.
But, absolutely gross. Revolting. The show was axed. Freya is a 23-year-old, not a journalist, but a conservative that the
conservative commentator.
But like the conservative side of politics likes to roll out. It's like, we do appeal to young person. He's one of them. And in news to many, apparently, like Sky News has standards when it comes to bigotry because Freya got the boot and the show was cancelled. But stay with me, because while the 23-year-old Freya was fired and the show was axed, there are some recent developments that we heard in recent days. 9 News appointed James Birtle as the new executive producer of A Current Affairs. Who is James Birtle? Where has he come from? Well, his last job was as an executive at Sky News, and he was overseeing the show Freya Fires Up.
Right.
On that evening.
She got boned, he got promoted.
Exactly. 9 News put out a statement saying James's proven leadership skills and deep editorial experience, both at 9 and his subsequent roles, place him in excellent stead to lead ACA. So
I love how you do the reads of the quotes, like it's so incredulous. It's like James's proven leadership and deep editorial experience.
Yeah, I mean the deep editorial experience that had a guest with bacon on his shoulders, like fucking gross. So he gets a promotion and a pat on the back for his editorial skills from 9. Freya, yes, who is problematic and is banded out as that young conservative, look, we appeal to young people. But I also want to point to something that was written in by Jenna Price in a column, who's a columnist whose writing I often enjoy. She writes SMH, which is part of the 9 group. It's part of 9 newspapers.
She wrote this a few weeks ago. I know the one you're talking about.
Yeah, and it was great. This is at the time.
Yeah, okay.
Freya Leach's Sky has fallen in, but what will be the punishment? Probably nothing. So Freya did get a punishment, but I want to quote another part. From the top down, these people promote misinformation and disinformation. It's apparent some broadcasters have no shame, and there are no regulators to enforce shame. And also asking whether, Freya was following orders or just precedent. But I want to go back to the title of that, because what will the punishment be? Probably nothing. Well, no punishment for James. He got a promotion, and he got a promotion for the same media group that you work at.
Right, okay.
Do you know what I mean? So I feel like Jenna's commentary was spot on. And she was like, is anyone going to be held accountable? This is just gross. It's from the top down. Freya's just a 23-year-old. Yes, she did the wrong thing. And I think her commentary was bang on. But it's like, well, the guy in charge, mate, he now works for who you write a column for, like in terms of the same media group.
Sure, right, okay. Yeah. Follow-up column from Jenna.
I know. So, I mean, it's just the latest.
I think also, I don't know if I'm speaking out of turn on behalf of the journos at 9, but I feel like the paper journos like the SMH and the Age and the Fin maybe would differentiate themselves from the TV I don't know.
I'm sure they do.
Am I being unfair? Maybe.
I'm sure they do. I'm
Yeah.
sure they do.
Yeah,
And there
yeah.
was resistance to when the merger happened.
Sure. And all of
And
that, yeah.
they would say, we're independent, we operate
But
differently.
it is the same umbrella media company.
It also speaks to how small the industry is, that you can be gross and doing gross things at Sky News, and then you've moved on. And before you know it, we don't know if this guy's going to be promoted next job to EP of 60 Minutes.
Sure, yeah. Dude, the amount of like men in media who you just read stories about who've done some like weird shady shit and then they just pop up.
Yeah.
At they're now the editor of this.
Yes.
You're like, oh, okay.
Oh, there's just story after story. I know one particular media outlet just a couple of years ago where there was a big investigation, there was a lawsuit, there were all these allegations, and one of the people at the centre of these allegations, while it was all ongoing, goes and just quietly gets another job at another outlet, quite a senior job, and their reputation seemingly untarnished, and they still have an ability to move on.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, the woman at the centre of this, or who was involved in this, has never worked again.
Yeah.
And we see this time and time again, irrespective of the size of the outlet, or the size of the scandal. And this kind of happens again and again. And the crossover between, say, like the tabloid or the Murdoch press into public broadcasting, for a lot of people, I think, would be surprised to know that, whether it be board members or managing editors.
Oh, dude, the industry's so small.
And they can go from being really senior at News Corp to, I don't know, being on the board of the ABC.
Yeah.
And so it's So anyway, that no is to just another example of men failing upwards in our industry. My second no goes to the ABC.
Okay.
And this is a tough no, because I really feel quite a bit of sort of like empathy for the Middle East correspondent, Eric Klozek. And he did this, what I thought was quite a good breakdown of a complex situation of like, okay, where are we at with Gaza and Israel? Because the hostages were being returned, the unlawfully detained prisoners were being returned, the ceasefire wasn't being upheld. And this is how Eric opened up.
A lot happened this week, so I'm going to break it down in 5 points.
Okay, a lot happened. I'm going to break it down in 5 points.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, okay, so the quick comment was he wanted to note that obviously peace had so-called arrived. It was precarious, but he wanted to know that there was still firing and bombing and the killing of Palestinians. So to your point, he's one of the very few journalists who was challenging this so-called ceasefire quite early.
The first is that the war sort of stopped. Israeli soldiers stopped trying to invade Gaza City and pulled out to what's called the Yellow Line, where they still occupy more than half of Gaza, but they're not in the main population centres. They also largely stopped bombing, although they did keep firing at Palestinians who approached the Yellow Line trying to go back to their houses,
Right.
and a number of Palestinian
good.
civilians were still killed. 2. The hostages came out of Gaza and Palestinian prisoners went back in, also to the West Bank and East Jerusalem. This was obviously a huge moment in Israel. The fate of these hostages, their treatment, the conditions that they were kept in, some in tunnels 30 metres below the ground, was an agonising thing for most of the Israeli public. And seeing them come home and be reunited with their families was a huge moment, both personally for those families and politically for the Israeli government and the Israeli public. For Palestinian prisoners, it was also a massive moment because many of these people were arrested in Gaza after the October 7 attacks, and they were kept without being charged in terrible conditions. Hundreds of them have alleged physical and sexual abuse, torture, starvation, deprivation, allegations that have been corroborated by the United Nations. They were coming back not knowing in some cases if their families had been killed by Israel's assault.
Okay.
So then he goes on to number 3. So if you listen to that, and this is essentially it's called like a live cross or a slab. Like it's delivered in one take or an as live.
yeah.
It's delivered in one take, direct to camera, no notes. This is like quite an impressive amount of information, and I think really quite fairly presented. If you were just listening, you might go, oh yeah, that seems fair. The dubious Yellow Line, the enormity of the hostages being returned, some of the conditions they were living in. But, and this is the real but, just as Eric was talking about the atrocities faced by Palestinian prisoners, which have been corroborated by the United Nations, the sexual violence and a whole bunch of other torture, before it even kind of started his sentence, or let alone landed the point, a denial came up, a graphic came up on the screen.
Okay. We'll have it for our YouTube audience. If you're watching this on YouTube, we'll make sure that we put it up there, but just explain it a bit.
But the graphic is essentially like, nah, bro, we didn't do it. A quote from the government committing a genocide whose leader is a wanted war criminal. They put a lengthy kind of denial, but you hadn't even had time to listen, because when you're watching something on TV and there's a news strap already on the bottom, before he's even made the allegations, let alone shown that it is a credible allegation, because it's corroborated by many people, Israeli doctors, and the United Nations, it comes up on the screen. And then I was like, I have a very strong feeling based on my experience working with ABC 24 when I was like one of the producers or did work in the control room. When reporters are out in the field, particularly when they're correspondents, they send this information, what the news strap is, what the kind of graphic, the later
Don't
graphic.
have any control over that. No.
I've never in my life seen, especially a correspondent, have the control over that. So in that instance, I felt...
And it happens, it's a moving feet as well.
Yes.
Like it's roll, well, that's why they call it rolling coverage. It
Yes.
sort of happens in real time.
Yeah, and I think there was also no Hamas denial in the graphic when he talked about the tunnels and the conditions that Israeli hostages were put in.
I mean, that would be fucking weird.
And it'd be wrong. And we would challenge that too.
Yeah.
You know, to be like, well, no, they didn't.
Yeah.
No, we didn't. No, we don't have tunnels.
Yeah. Hamas says they don't have any tunnels.
Yes, and Hamas said they were treated great, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I definitely think it was distracting and it was confusing. And, you know.
So you reckon it's like some producer, I mean, look, this is all going to be conjecture, but we are speaking from some degree of experience in various other newsrooms that sort of operate like this, where someone's like, we probably need to
balance.
Balance. But also just like, well, we need a strap that maybe adds something here.
It was actually completely distracting. And, you know, whether that...
What did the strap say? Do we have it? Do you have it on file?
I just didn't want to repeat it because it was such bullshit, but I will for the purposes, for the audio audience. Let me just go back to it.
Yeah.
But, you know, my summary was, nah, bro, we didn't do it.
Yeah, that was your summary.
So before he's even said, hundreds of them have alleged, before the comes out of his mouth, the graphic pops up, IDF spokesperson. The IDF completely rejects allegations regarding the systematic abuse of detainees, including allegations of sexual abuse. He hasn't even made the allegation.
Oh, sure. Okay.
He's like,
yeah.
And I'm just like, what on earth is that? And the reason I have a very strong suspicion that this was, well, also based on experience, that this was not how Eric wanted to present the information. I also listened to a report he filed for AM, which is the Radio Current Affairs program. And that was far clearer. And not that there was no inclusion of the denial.
Yeah.
At the top of his report, he says detainees were subject to physical and psychological abuse by prison guards, including beating, starvation, and using dogs to attack and sexually assault the captives. Hundreds of detainees have made the same claims, as have Israeli doctors, soldiers, and other staff at the prisons.
Right.
And then it goes to Shadi, like one of the people who's experienced that abuse.
This
so
is
it goes to a first person in his AM story.
Mm-hmm.
Then the denial comes.
Sure.
So, I mean, by then, the weight of the information is pretty overwhelming. And the denial is given the kind of, well, IDF says it doesn't. But I mean, by then you've heard hundreds, doctors, Israelis, soldiers. Here's a first person saying they've done it. By then it's given the weight and that it deserves, which is not much.
Yeah.
But the clip that made it onto social media and onto television didn't even allow him to make the allegation before rebutting it, which I think is just so gross and wrong and does him a disservice.
Well, and this is what I was going to say. I actually think that this no is a yes for Eric.
Yeah,
is it?
Eric. Yeah.
Good on you, Eric.
Yeah,
I guess.
Thank you for doing your job, Eric. And I'm sorry that some, cowards in air conditioning back in Ultimo. What is it? We're in a genocide. There's a genocide.
I mean, truly, we're just, putting all this on Eric. I don't know how he feels about that super. I don't even think
I stand by my cowards in air conditioning in Ultimo.
Look, I can probably vouch that they are indeed in air conditioning. Dude, control rooms get fucking hot. Are you kidding me? There's so many people in there. There's so many screens.
I feel so much empathy now because of
the conditions that these people must work in.
So tough.
My
Thoughts
God.
and prayers.
Yeah. I mean, can I just say, I feel a bit sorry. I just want to acknowledge that, like, being on the ground in Tel Aviv, where all of these reporters are, in Israel, because, of course, they're not allowed into Gaza, it's fucking challenging. Like, we're sitting here in air conditioning.
Yeah.
I mean,
we've turned ourselves
We've turned our air conditioning off, yeah, actually.
It's a bit hot.
Yeah, it is. It does get schwitzy in here with the air conditioning off, let me just say. But, you know, there is an element of, like, it's very easy to criticize. Well, it's certainly easier than being there on the ground. And I think, like, they cop so much shit from so many angles, and some of it is warranted. And I'd like to think, like, if we, you know, make a criticism, I'd like to think it's fair. I hope it's fair. Yeah. But, like, I saw a clip of Matt Doran just getting ambushed by, you know, Avi Yemeni on camera.
Who's like a convicted violent offender and yes.
But all sorts of things. There's like a clear kind of agenda of, you know, wanting to like own this ABC journo and just embarrass him. And, you know, it's not a good faith two-way or whatever you want to call it.
And pretty much everything that comes out of, and Matt Darren has tried to say in his reports, that comes out of his packages or his stories is filtered through the Israeli press office.
Yeah, he has said that before.
You know, and so they're stifled. They're not allowed to get in to, you know, where the actual story is in Gaza. They're controlled by their kind of overlords, their hosting overlords in Israel. And then they're bailed up by this right-wing provocateur on camera.
Yeah.
And then they have...
And then they have us and
cowards in air conditioning. And then they have cowards in air conditioning. It's a hard time. It's a hard time.
Well, listen, man, blessings and tidings, really. Like, I do wish them well.
Sure.
I'm not there.
Yeah.
I'm here.
It's a bit of a poison chalice that it's posting in this moment.
Yeah. Or in any moment. At any point in the last. Oh God, that posting, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
That's a tough one. All right, that's your yes, no. Yeah, no.
Yeah, I think that's fair. That's fair.
All right. Hello there. If you have made it this far, you are clearly liking what you are seeing or you're hating it. Either way, subscribe because it helps us and it helps you because that way we're in your feed. Love ya. Back to the show. Moving on. Our conversation this week is it's going to be around, you know, what we sort of like learned and observed by having done some stories last week. We did break the story of, like, as I said at the top of the show, in case you need a reminder, the Prime Minister's phone number ending up on a US-based website, and basically there's nothing that anybody can do about it.
Yeah, and a few weeks ago we did one on Meanjin, the literary journal, why it was really axed by Melbourne University Press.
Yes, or what some of the allegations around its axing were. We had another story that we were going to break, but then Lamestream beat us to it.
Bloody hell, our friends at Lamestream.
Good on them.
We do love you. We love you, though.
No, we love that. But, you know, it kind of got us thinking about the differences between journalism and commentary because we are a commentary and critique podcast, right?
Yeah.
But last week was a veering into journalism, and that felt very different to commentary.
It was really different. It required so much more research, so much time, right of reply, wondering if we're on ASIO watch lists, contacting the government, contacting a lawyer, wondering who and if we've defamed anybody. And,
yes.
You know, like it was it was a lot.
The writing and the presentation of it is very different to commentary. And that's because, like, those two are actually two different things. And I think that I was going to say in recent years, but yeah, I guess in recent years, there's become an increasing blur between them.
Yeah.
And not just because of commentary online, but also there's an increasing blur within the, you know, mainstream media itself, where you read something and it presents as a piece of journalism, but actually the comment is strong.
Yeah. So bear with us as we do a little bit of journalism kind of 101 and unpack the differences between the two. And it's, you know, we're not just doing it because we think you don't understand the difference, but because there's research that shows that, you know, around 50% of people have trouble differentiating between news and commentary. So bear with us. So broadly, like, the news is what happened. You're meant to report verified facts. It's, you know, the who, what, when, why, and how. That's what you're taught at journalism school. Example, like the Prime Minister announced a new climate policy on Tuesday. So you've got the who, you've got the what's happening. I mean, this one doesn't say the how. How did he do it? By standing up and talking in front of a press pack, whatever. That's how he did it. And you aim for like objective, verifiable facts. Opinion interprets like what it means. It uses the facts but adds judgment, analysis, or perspective. So example, if we're staying with the climate policy, the new climate policy shows the government's desperation to win votes.
Right.
So that's subjective. That's shaped by the writer's view or experience or subject matter expertise on climate policy or that particular government. I think where some of the blurring of the lines have occurred, traditionally in newspapers, you had the news at the front, the kind of front 10 pages, and then you had kind of opinion and comment in the middle, and it was titled opinion, comment, or editor's view. And then in the back you had sport, and then you had classified for the remaining 30% and ads in the remaining 30%. So online, you don't often get that. Even from news outlets, you don't get whether this is news specifically, whether this is opinion. And so sort of the bias and the opinion is harder to spot. I would also add in that mix that TV panel shows, so you have your 6 o'clock news, your 5 o'clock news on commercial TV, but then there's a plethora of, or there was until a whole bunch got axed, like Q&A, The Project, and The Drum, where it was news of the day, but it was opinion about news of the day. But even in breakfast television programs, you have here's the 5-minute news segment at the top of the hour, but then you've got a whole bunch of commentary on the couch. And they're not often clearly differentiated. So I think it's the internet, and also some kind of TV panel shows that could be blurring the lines. And probably podcasters like us who were confusing everybody.
Lots of people say to me, like, oh, yours is the only podcast where I get my news from. And I'm like, oh, dear.
Yeah. Problem. This is a problem.
Yes. And I'm like, that's interesting because we are not a news podcast. We are a commentary podcast on the news. So, you have to be consuming the news, which is a different thing.
And people say that. I only get my news from Candace Owens and, whatever, and then name another commentator. And I'm like, oh, that is a problem.
Yeah. And so like the best way to understand that there definitely is a differentiation between news and commentary is that like commentators comment on the news. They need the news. They need somebody to create the news in order to then be able to comment on the news. I think where it kind of gets blurred for me is that what presents as news is often in itself by deciding the headline and by deciding the placing and by deciding the image and by deciding, who is who's the expert voice in the story and by deciding what the lead is, by making all of these daily decisions, like they're all comment. Like all of that decision making about what
shows
a news story.
A certain bias. That could show a certain bias. But there are more egregious examples of where, so if we take the Herald Sun's front page on Monday this week, it was off the back of, police being quite upset about rocks being thrown at them. I think maybe a police officer was injured. And the front page was police in riot gear and war zone in the heart of Melbourne. And then that was kind of at the top of the newspaper. And then the main headline is, do you call this safe, Premier?
And in big, bold,
huge
white writing on black
so
background.
I'm like, what? Front page is the news. This is who is asking the Premier that? Who's determined this is a war zone in the heart of Melbourne? And so in this instance, I feel and the Herald Sun or the Murdoch Press does this a lot in the lead up to elections around policies that it's campaigning or, lobbying against. They try and present news. This is clearly a position. This is an editorial position. This is a political attack on the Premier. Yeah, and so I think that's deliberately. So we could go, oh, it's the internet, it's podcasters. Then it's irresponsible press who know what they're doing. They know that they're blurring news and commentary and people can't a lot of people can't tell the difference, or that at the very least they're getting confused.
Yeah, yeah. The other thing that I keep thinking about between news and commentary is like how difficult it is to translate journalism natively onto social media. And the reason that it's difficult is because journalism requires time, requires resources, requires more than one person, certainly more than one eyeball over the story, like an editor. If you want to break stories, then you need to build relationships with, hopefully you have a round, and the round that you cover is one that you put a lot of time into. You might meet someone for lunch, and you know what? There's no story, but you've spent half the day meeting them for lunch, and that's part of the relationship building that you have to do in order to gain the trust of people so that they come to you with a story about your particular round. Now, all of that takes time, and
I just want to jump in and talk about what a round is for those who might understand. Like a health reporter, a crime reporter, a political reporter. There are obviously a lot of general reporters, but it's that expertise. If you do have a particular expertise, you become a bit of a subject matter expert, or someone who has a lot of insight and contacts within a particular sector.
Yes. Yeah. And so my question is, how do you translate that natively onto social media and actually produce journalism on social media? Because social media is way more reactive, in my view and in my experience, than what, being in the mainstream media is, even though there's a 24-hour news cycle. It's built on, outrage. It doesn't really reward the longer, more thought through pieces. It rewards the very quick, we call them bang for buck posts, where it's just these quick kind of hot takes. So it rewards commentary more so than it does journalism.
Yeah, and investigative. I mean, anybody can do a little tile going, Trump said this about Rudd, which we'll now see, no doubt, days of it.
Yeah. And no shade on us.
No,
who also do that.
We'll also do that, right? But that's something that just happened, that was caught on camera.
Yeah.
That is easy to go, okay, it's readily available. But to break news, or to do an investigation, we can all reiterate that this car crashed into this building at this time, or Trump said this, or they did that, or that house was burnt down. That is kind of very top line. Everybody can access that sort of news. But breaking the news and revealing the stories that other people aren't telling, that takes time and takes money, and it takes resources, and often takes risks. Because usually when you're revealing something, you are revealing something powerful people don't want revealed.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. And so when you're within the scaffolding of a mainstream media organization, well, you have in-house lawyers, and you have, you just have in-house expertise. You can stand up in the middle of a newsroom and shout out to someone, hey, are you the, health reporter? I have a question about this. And then there's a knowledge sharing that happens. I think when you're sort of on the internet and you're a much smaller outfit, you're definitely more exposed. So again, comes to that question of the translation of journalism natively is actually quite hard.
I know. After we did what we did, we were right, we were just kind of bracing ourselves for what to come next. We're going to get a call from the AFP or whatever. And at one point, Jan, you said to me, you're like, I don't want to do this. This is hard. I don't want to do this. And I was like, it is hard. It's important, but it's hard.
Yeah. Honestly, I oscillate so wildly between having the deepest and most profound respect for journalists and just wanting a pox on all their houses.
But I love that you're honest enough to share that tension.
Definitely. Yeah. That's the main tension.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just depending on the day, depending on the time of the day, we're not sure where we're at.
Well, less about our existential angst and more about audiences.
Okay,
right?
Go ahead.
Because I struggled to find Australian studies, but I did find a couple of American studies. One in 2024 found that over 45% of people struggle to tell the difference between facts and statements of opinions. And when it comes to those who did better, those who had generally better current affairs knowledge, who had better education and better cognitive ability. So obviously taking into a factor people's ages and their cognitive ability. Another study found that just 14% of American high schoolers could distinguish between fact and opinion. And then there was a similar study from the
14%
just
is
14%,
low.
Really low. And you think about a generation who are used to seeing hot takes on TikTok, certain people that, they trust, more likely to trust individuals and identities, even if they are a reality TV person or just someone that they like, in their Get Ready With Me. And so, that kind of media literacy for younger people is even more important. So I couldn't find comparable statistics for Australia, but I just thought, okay, this is not good. We understand the tension. We understand that sometimes it's deliberate. It's deliberately manufactured by certain outlets, as in the confusion. And sometimes it's just because the way the industry is and the difficulty in monetizing journalism. Journalism costs money. It doesn't make a lot of money. It doesn't make a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so that there is this tendency to either do the really superficial breaking news or do opinion, because opinion, you can fill 800 words much more easy if it's just someone's take than it is revealing something new.
Yeah, there's also like lots of like legal defenses for opinion that don't exist for journalism. So for fair comment, for example,
yes,
you know, you can say, well, I said this under fair comment, and there's like a different, standard.
A different threshold. Yeah,
threshold.
It's not always a get out of jail opinion.
No, that's right.
Get out of jail card. But I did come across some research done earlier this year from ANU, because I was like, we can't just be like, everything is shit. Best of luck. See you next week, guys. Buy an Etterati t-shirt. We love you. We want to actually like give you something constructive.
Mm-hmm.
So ANU research earlier this year suggested that part of the way audiences would be able to comprehend the sort of news and opinions they get is they're arguing in favor of a news bias index. So what that means is like a number that is attributed to a particular outlet, let's just say on a scale of 1 to 10, which places them on where their bias is. If they are more right-leaning, if they are more neutral, if they are this and this and this, there would be a generalized index, and there could be a particular index based on big issues, be it like politics, environment, health. So that if you go into the Herald Sun, for example, seeing that front page masquerading as a news story, which is really suggesting that there is war in Melbourne, and you go in knowing that they have a 9 out of 10 index, I'm making it up, 9 being bad, closer to 10 being bad, 9 out of 10 index for being polarizing, being anti-Labor because there's a Labor government in...
Right. We're making up all this criteria.
I'm just giving you an example.
Sure,
These are hypotheticals based on...
Sure, then you'd be able to place
They are more
them.
likely to be hostile towards progressive governments. They're more likely to be hostile towards this. That you are more likely to read that information, consume that information, be it news or current affairs. So news, current affairs or opinion, with the amount of kind of skepticism and framing, which would allow you to digest it better.
Right, I see. Okay. So it's funny because like you go into journalism and you're always told like, don't declare your colours. But this one is almost like, guys, what you're suggesting from the Australian research is like, we got to go the opposite direction. Everyone is declaring.
Well, I think
everyone should just go in. We should understand we should plot everyone onto an ecosystem rather than sitting here pretending that everybody's just impartial.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I think we have to stop treating audiences like they're stupid and like they don't realise that there's influence and agendas, whether that be influenced by lobby groups, influenced by advertisers, influenced by their billionaire owners, that the news that we get is influenced and it's skewed. Some more than others. Some do a better job than others. BBC is the most trusted news organisation in the world. ABC is the most trusted in Australia. There are variations. What the ANU researchers don't purport is that this index is the be-all and end-all. They say it's like not a silver bullet, but they also suggest that media literacy education for young people, like, as we saw, particularly for those American high schoolers,
sure.
And access to diverse publicly funded news also matter. So they make a big case for diverse, and a well-funded public broadcaster. I found it interesting, and I also thought, based on the declare your colours or declare your bias, in some ways, I think that's why people who trust us are coming to us with these stories. So we're getting tip-offs and we're getting leaks and we're getting access.
We do get a lot of that.
We get a lot. We have so much that we have to turn away and say, look, this is not our remit.
Yeah.
It's because I think that inherently, because we have declared some of our views or our journalistic standards, that in some ways, not that we sought to do that to go, we're going to trick them into trusting us and giving us all their store tips. No, because that's not what we set out to do. But I almost feel that it's kind of working, depending on how you might want to measure working, in the sense that our audience really trusts us. So many people that have said, I haven't sent this to anybody else. I want to share this with you. I trust you'll treat it with care. And it's hard to be like, oh, sorry, we don't have the team. This is not what we do.
Anyway. Because we do commentary, not journalism, going back to the point that those two are very different.
Yes.
And we hope that you have learned something from this discussion this afternoon, or whenever it is that you're listening to this podcast. I don't know. All right, great. We're just barreling through. It's a yes.
It is a yes.
It's a yes from me and you. Let's start with you. What's your yes?
Okay, so my yes goes to Zateo's founder and editor-in-chief, Mehdi Hasan. He spoke at the Washington, D.C. rally over the weekend. It was one of the major events of the No Kings kind of rallies, and people were protesting against the authoritarian drift in under Donald Trump.
Yeah, this is like 7 million people turned out right around the United States. There were like thousands or over 2,500 protests in 50 states. Yep.
Yes.
In case you didn't hear about it, that's what we're talking about.
And what I loved in his speech, I mean, it was like a 10-minute speech. It was great. Terrifying that he had to speak behind like a bulletproof like glass or thing.
Mehdi Hasan.
Yeah, all of this. If you have a look at the video, which we're about to play in a moment, they're speaking behind. I mean, obviously after the assassination of Charlie Kirk, but also the fact that everybody has a gun in America, and that's one thing that just kind of shocked me.
Of course,
like, oh my God.
to a non-American, you're like, what's happening?
What the hell?
Yeah.
But in his speech, he identified himself as a journalist, an immigrant, and a Muslim, and he called that like Trump's trifecta. But this is the part that I really enjoyed.
The great irony is, of course, that Donald Trump is the son of an immigrant, the grandson of an immigrant, and married to an immigrant. In fact, 2 of his 3 wives were immigrants, proving yet again that immigrants will do the jobs that even Americans are not willing to do.
It's just the best. It's just the best.
No, that's not a bad joke.
It's great. Yeah. And what I love about, I love seeing a journalist there. I love seeing a journalist at these No Kings rallies, because a creeping authoritarianism
also affects the press.
We've talked about that tension between activists, journalists going to protests. Also, like Trump and his administration in the lead up tried so hard to frame these protests as like Hamas support protests. They also called the Antifa protests. And I honestly, every time I hear the way Trump says Antifa, I almost feel like he's trying to make it sound like a foreign word or an Arabic word, when really it's just short for anti-fascists. Like a lot of people, I don't think, would realize that it's kind of some weird umbrella term. There isn't like an Antifa card-carrying organization. It's just like a general movement of people who are against fascism.
He's going to have to try harder if he wants it to sound Arabic. Say, ha! You coward.
Say
it.
That's it.
Say it. Cough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's funny and frank and fearless. I love Mehdi Hasan. Also, the fact that he just described the president of the US as the whiny authoritarian man-child.
Bro, did you see the video that Trump put out about this? Have you seen it? That's a genuine question. You've seen it?
And my jaw dropped when he sent it to me.
It was this AI video. How do I know it's AI? Oh, I don't know, because it's Donald Trump wearing a crown in a fighter jet with like Top Gun music that he posted onto his Truth Social. If you're on YouTube, you'll be able to see it. You know what? I'm going to play it. Just so you can hear the music. So you know what I'm talking about. He's got a crown on. He looks very orange, which is weird. And it's literally like this fighter jet that is dumping shit. Like, it looks like shit. It's just dumping tons and tons of what looks like excrement onto the protesters at the No Kings protest. And it's just clearly entirely AI and fucking wild.
What was the caption?
There's no caption. There was no what else do you need to say when you post something like that? Like, what the fuck caption is going to like do any heavy lifting for a video like that?
And like putting like a crown on?
Oh, just everything. Like these are 7 million of your own people taken to the street, and you're shitting on them. Like, I don't want to say literally, but it's almost like as close to literally. It's like, that's what the imagery was in this thing. Just completely wild. Anyway, there you go. So that's your yes. Speaking of journalists and the press being also victims, if you will, of rising authoritarianism, where somebody might want to put on a crown and go in a fighter jet and just just release tons of shit onto you as you protest against them. My yes from me comes to us courtesy of American journalists, actually.
we're staying crossing the Pacific. We're staying there. Okay.
We're keeping there. Yep, exactly. Specifically the journalists who work at the worked at the Pentagon. Because if you have not heard the story, the Trump administration brought in a whole bunch of new kind of rules and regulations and restrictions on what you can report and what your level of access is into the Pentagon. And they basically said, we're bringing in this new thing. You have to either sign on or you get your passes revoked, basically. And all of the journalists, almost unanimously.
What were some of the stipulations or caveats of what you had to sign?
So this came down from the Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth. Basically, he's like, you can't report on matters that are not like approved for reporting on, right? That's not like he's going to, sit there and edit your copy, but there are certain matters that he can decide whether or not they're approved for reporting. The journalists were worried that you wouldn't be able to ask a source for information that you haven't been explicitly authorized to discuss. Like that's one of the ways they were worried it was going to, because that's how you get stories, right? Like you speak to sources off the record, you build those relationships like we were talking about before. There was restrictions in the movement around the Pentagon. There were certain places where under these new restrictions, you might have to be escorted. So, they just felt like they were surveilled, basically. They had to do like renewal of passes. So every few months. And then I think it was like, don't quote me on this, but like every 6 months or maybe every year, but there was like a stricter policy that came into place.
So like if you report too much or too closely, you're likely to not get renewed. So nearly all US outlets, including to some people's surprise, Fox News and Newsmax.
Yeah, the ones that love Trump.
Yeah. They refused to sign it. And there were 15 reporters that signed the press pledge. They were mainly pro-Trump, foreign or small independent outlets. That's according to the Washington Post, who saw the names of the 15 reporters that did sign it. And there was a little cameo, a little appearance and then a disappearing act by one particular outlet that said, you know what, we're up for this.
Yes, it was the Australian. It'd kill me for saying this. I'm going to see your eyes widen. In their defense, which is really not much of a defense, but they did retract. So I think there was one journo who signed up to it, and then somebody brought it to the Australians' attention that was like, did you guys sign up to this? I think it was another member of the press. And then they were like, no, they backflipped. Do you know what I mean? That's why it was like a quick on-stage appearance.
Yeah, right.
quick celeb appearance, and then,
Fair enough.
And then they're like, no, actually, we can't sign on to this. So they have not signed on to those rules and regulations. But there was that really great imagery, I don't know if you want to call it great, but of all of the reporters, like dozens of them, just with their shit, boxes.
I like how it was like framed as a walking out.
Yeah.
They didn't they didn't sign, but then their passes, they couldn't get in, so they had to walk out.
Well, yeah, right, and here they are. I just want to, we're just playing it for you. Like, they're all there with their lanyards and their boxes, and lots of them appear to be carrying some kind of like cardboard pieces. Weird, I don't know, but they're all like just walking out of their workplace.
Yeah, it's pretty powerful imagery.
Yeah.
Also, that the power in numbers, going back to something Mehdi Hasan said, is that there is one thing that we can do. We can assemble, we can protest, we can walk out, we can say no, and just kind of reinvigorate people, be that, per industry or the greater masses. It's like we have a say, and that we shouldn't just sit by while we see attacks on democracy and press freedom.
Yeah, and exactly. And the last point that I want to make about this that I thought was interesting, and this is something that we've discussed, although we could probably stand to discuss it in a little bit more kind of detail and depth, but the idea of access and, why access is so important especially to political journos, to having that access to, the people in power, and sometimes why journos can get a little bit high off it, And so I think this poses like an interesting question, which was like, what does the production of journalism look like without the access, like what can you actually produce without the access? And I think that'll be just an interesting thing to look at moving forward, because they're still doing journalism, they're still doing the work, they're still Pentagon reporters. They're just,
I dare say they do it with more criticism now,
maybe
with it at an arm's length. Because I just very quickly, I did have a moment when we were doing the Albanese story, or like the fact that his data was leaked and that he's trying to push through a whole bunch of kind of digital ID stuff, and we questioned whether if he can't keep his own data secure online, can he keep our data secure online? And when we were engaging with the PM's office, and they, did provide a comment and initially asked if we could hold the story, which we didn't. We proceeded, and I thought, they're not going to like us very much. The PM's office not going to like us very much. And then I was like, and I had to catch myself, and I'm like, nor should they.
Right.
Nor should they.
Right.
Like, it is not my job to be liked by the Prime Minister's press person.
Yes.
That is not my job.
I know, but I'll push back on that just slightly and say that, like, when you have a round, like a health reporter is expected to build relationships, and as is a political reporter. And so it just becomes a constant state of management. I think it's eternal vigilance.
That's fair.
With the caveat that, like, we're not here to make friends with people.
But if you are quite chummy and I think it can get blurry, and you want to get on the side, particularly for the most powerful person. I guess for independents or the opposition, people with less power, but you are meant to hold power to account, and there's no more powerful person than that person in Australia sitting in the PM's office. So, I get the tension, but I had to catch myself and go, well, he shouldn't like me. He or she shouldn't like me, because that's not my job to be liked.
Yeah. Okay, good. That's a good way of thinking. Yeah. And on that does bring us to the end of our show. Maybe next week we'll discuss access. I don't know.
Who knows? So much happens.
Is happening.
Like, we're going to step out of this studio, and God knows what we're going to. Every time we step out of the studio, we're going to be like, oh my God.
I'm going to get in some air conditioning, because, as I said, we did turn the air conditioning off in here, and it's wild times. Thank you once again for joining us for yet another episode of We Used To Be Journos. If this is the only place that you get your news from, stop doing that. Get it from other places too, my friends.
Yeah. We love to read your feedback. We love to read your reviews. We love to read your tip-offs. Keep them coming. But most of all, we love to see that you have become a subscriber and are able to support us remaining independent and support us not being liked by the Prime Minister's office.
Yes, so if you would like to keep doing that, remember, it is Media, ETTE media.com. You can head over there and you can subscribe with your dollars, because that really is what keeps us making this literal show that you've gotten this far into. So thank you so much, and we will catch you next week.
Chat then.
Bye-bye.